Welcome, everyone, to episode 17 of the PHU Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Texas Armadillos GM Eric Delarada, and this is my esteemed colleague and Long Gamers GM Sean O'Shea. Sean, how are you doing so far this season?
Sir, if I was doing any better, I would be you, because you're 2-0.
I'm happy with my 2-0 start. As mentioned in the Discord the other day, it's been a tumultuous start, I should say, to my season with respects to some of my players, which we'll get into later. But I'm happy to be 2-0 nevertheless, so I'm not going to complain about it. Not too shabby of a start for you, though. You're doing pretty well yourself.
All right.
Doing all right. You ran into some interesting matchups, too, which we'll talk about here. But so we're essentially going to be talking about week 1 and 2. Hopefully, this is a regular thing that we end up doing with some short-term kind of roundups from maybe 2-3 weeks throughout the season. It's pretty hard to do it every week, but we'll try to get them in as much as we can for you guys, for the PHU Dynasty fam. So let's get right into this, Sean. And I'll tell you what, we had some barn burners in week 1, and I'll tell you what, I am ready to talk about this. So let's get into it. So for week 1, and I already got the wrong screen up, so production value on key point right now. There we go. Week 1, we got some interesting matchups. We had the Armadillos taking down the Philadelphia Lampposts, and that was a game that many expected to be two of the titans of the league, if you will. Didn't really turn out to be that way on the scoreboard, but I think as James mentioned on his Dynabook podcast, the Lampposts, they suffered some injuries early in the season. They weren't really throwing out their perfect potential lineup that they thought they were going to be throwing out there. So they suffered with a little bit with the 108. And then my team did what I expected them to do. Nick Chubb looked good. Tom Brady obviously had a great week 1.
Yeah, decisively winning the quarterback matchup there.
38-19, Brady to Josh Allen. Also, the receivers were a little bit hit or miss for Dan's team that week. He had Justin Jefferson at 7.5. DK had a 12, and Keenan had 11. But that was completely balanced out by DeAndre Hopkins' 2-touchdown performance that he dropped that amazing catch. The first one was just unreal in the back of the end zone, just crazy body control. And then Travis Kelce with his what seems like usual 19.6.
You don't even need to look. You just know you win the tight end matchup every week. It's kind of nice.
He is once again my Lord and Savior. So there's the tight end matchup was actually 19-2 from Mark Andrews to Travis Kelce. So that's a huge help to my squad. And then Adam Thielen, we were wondering about touchdown regression. Was that going to happen? That has not been the case so far. It's been 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks so far. No signs of slowing down there. The real blemish in my roster this week was Brandon Ayuk, though. After an offseason that I thought, was going to be, a breakout season, literally didn't do anything week 1. He barely played. He got benched essentially. And I was floored. I remember I looked at it because I was out of the house and I was looking at the scores at halftime, and I was like, okay, so is Brandon Ayuk dead? Did he not make it to the stadium?
No, he just plays for Kyle Shanahan.
We got some.
Shanahan loves to just give everybody the double bird.
Yeah, that and Trey Sermon we'll talk about later when we get to some other matchups.
Oh yeah.
So basically, we're looking at Antonio Gibson, Dalvin Cook looked good for Dan's team. 8 points and 14 respectively. But it just wasn't enough to get past me on the first week. So let's keep moving on.
Dan's team, early candidate for the Justin Senior underachieving team of the year?
So far, it's kind of looking like that. But there's still plenty of time. He ran into a couple of good matchups, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and see what ends up happening.
All right, let's get moving on here to honestly the matchup of the week. Really,
this is what people wanted. This is what the fans wanted to see. They wanted to see the chili cheese fries and the Muskegon Muskrats. And Sean, this is very loud audio, so I'm going to turn it off right now. That was crazy loud. And I cannot control it, sadly, so I'm going to just shut that off really fast. And yeah, the Muskrats, we didn't think this was going to be a high-scoring game. The thing that I love about this game, though, is just the fact that the Cheese Fries put up 88.88. I think it's just beautiful to look at. And if you're going to score less than 100, that's the way to do it.
My favorite part is that Mahomes was 40 of them.
You get half the points. And then I am kind of looking for other options, like Donovan Peoples-Jones, 0.4.
No other player in double digits for the Cheese Fries, which is by design. If we're
this is what he wanted. And if you look at the squad, the players that he started, you can't really say, oh, why'd you start that guy? They all make sense on the roster. So
yeah, for what he has on his roster, it makes sense.
I mean, Trent Sherfield was a nice little start, getting 8 points out of him in a flex spot. I mean, it was kind of interesting. This is going to be a recurring theme for the Cheese Fries this year. It's going to be Mahomes putting up stupid numbers and everybody else kind of just literally just finding their way onto the roster somehow. It's going to be interesting. The one thing I will say is that Tibbs, I believe, still has Elijah Mitchell, and
he does.
He had that blow up first week and has not traded him. So I am intrigued to see what ends up happening there, and because that could be some consistent points.
All the other running backs still getting injured, himself too, but like there's just no depth on that roster right now. I think they bring in like Lamar Miller, and what else do they bring in for a workout? There's somebody else. Trenton Cannon got signed.
Trenton Cannon. There's some other shithead that got signed, I think, today. His name is like Jaquez Patrick or something like that. Which kind of sounds like it could be like a Justin French name instead of Justin Patrick.
Jacques.
Jacques. We might start calling him that. Jacques Patrick. So, the Muskrats, they're going to, get on their high horse over being 1-1, but, come on. It's the Cheese Fries. You gotta, they didn't even win decidedly. Like, it was kind of close. Like, I was expecting a lot more, and that did not happen. So, 114, it doesn't really impress me all that much.
Yeah,
he did lose Jerry Jeudy in this game as well.
He took the hit with Jeudy going out. That is tough for him, especially with Etienne already going out for the year to start. I mean,
those were kind of the two guys that he was kind of counting on.
Yeah, his roster doesn't obviously have depth yet, so any key piece going down is going to hurt him.
Yeah, I can sense Tony Pollard being started most weeks now because of that, which is fine because he's looked pretty good.
Yeah, talk about stock.
He's a standalone flex guy at this point.
Oh, yeah.
He had some decent production from some rookies. He had Jalen Waddle this week, had 61 yards and a touchdown. I basically classify Henry Ruggs as a rookie because he was so bad his rookie season. He had 4 points, whatever, it's fine. Mecole Hardman with 19 yards. It's going to be a tough sled for Alex to make the playoffs, even with this roster he's throwing out there. 114 is not going to be enough. So most weeks he's going to have to put up some more points than that, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and move to the next matchup. So the next matchup we got is the Swallows versus the Lambs. And James, this was actually one of the better games of the week. I followed this one most of the time. 157 to 130. James didn't get a huge performance out of his quarterback, and neither did Vince, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers week 1.
Oh, no.
That was a disaster. And then Ronald Jones
put up 130 without a quarterback, basically. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Ronald Jones, too, was his RB1 this week, and he dropped the old DeLone Carter special with points, -6. You just hate to see that. So he basically got and basically would be a net 2 point something out of Ronald Jones and Aaron Rodgers, which is just usually what most weeks you're not even getting to like 110 with that kind of production. Yeah, so that was huge. The big saviors obviously were Debo going off week 1 in the absence or the wake of the death of Brandon Ayuk. And then also getting Darren Waller at 17 points and Cooper Kupp at 17 points. Antonio Brown at 19 points with that huge week 1. So I really like some of these guys on Vince's team, despite the loss. I mean, a lot of big names playing well, specifically Cooper Kupp, really blowing up so far this first couple of games with Matt Stafford. Big fan.
I don't see that changing anytime soon. think on one of our preseason shows, like we talked about just like the variance of like those wide receivers. Like if they're gonna keep playing like this, like Cup could definitely finish as like the number one receiver on the year. It would not surprise me.
I mean, it seems like he kind of commands the most red zone targets when they
Yeah.
getting those like 30 in and 20 in situations.
And they just don't use the run game effectively in the red zone. So
they haven't done that since they had Gurley. It's been pretty weak, but the one thing I will say is they lost Fitzpatrick in this game, which kind of hurt McLaurin's totals there for Vince. I mean, obviously the week after it kind of picked up. We'll get to that, but James's team. Let's talk about James. He got the W. Let's see how he did that. Tyler Lockett, 23 points, looking nice. Looking nice. I kind of thought that was going to be, it's that Tyler Lockett boom week, and then he does it again last week. So maybe he's turning the corner with more consistency. CD Lamb,
that offense looks different this year, just a little bit. Like they're just, I don't know. I don't think I don't see that dropping off like it did the year before.
Yeah, I agree because that's a new coordinator there too. So I feel like, that's maybe the route that they're going is more consistency for some of these other receivers outside of DK. Yeah. So we'll have to see as it goes on. But so far through 2 games, it looks good. I wanted to talk quickly about CD Lamb because obviously this is the face of the Lambs franchise here. So this is a very important player for this organization, and he showed up big time week 1 at 15 targets against the Bucs because they could not run the ball whatsoever. Obviously, through 2 weeks, he's looking like a stud, and James needed him to be a stud in this breakout season to go along with Mike Evans.
Just like looking at it, week 1, like he could have had 30 fantasy points. Like
he dropped some passes too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Touchdown, I think, right?
He dropped at least one in the red zone. I remember that. And then he had a couple other shittier throws that he could have hauled in, but just kind of didn't. Yeah. But here's something we got to talk about with James's team. Look at the production from the 2 guys that he made that big trade for, those 2 running backs, Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler.
Solid.
Picking up 22 points from Mixon, 11 points from Eckler. That's what James was hoping for. That's what James needs if he wants to get to the championship game. After week 1 looks great. So let's see here. We can go ahead and move on. Let's go to your matchup, Sean. So we had you taking down the Toronto Battle Axes, which I thought was a bit of an upset. Most people would say that Scavelli's team heading into the season was the 3rd best team. So that was a nice win for you.
He caught his running back sleeping, man. That's all.
Yeah, because they woke up the next week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry combined for just about 9.9 points. So that's crazy. On top of Deshaun Jackson, Allen Robinson, and Stephon Diggs basically staying under 12 points combined. Basically, Scavelli's team just kind of didn't really show up outside of Jamal Williams, who had a nice week 1. And obviously Russell Wilson was cooking week 1 as well. So you kind of picked a good week to play Scavelli, it seems like.
Yeah, I survived the Mostert injury week 1 after 1 carry, 2 carries.
Yeah, you should have expected that, honestly, but you might as well just bench him. Like, even if he plays, you should just bench him.
Really should.
It's crazy. He can't stay healthy. But Tyreek Hill obviously going off for 27 points. That's always nice to look at. Lamar Jackson for 20. Jonathan Taylor, kind of a slow start, but had a lot of receiving yards. It's very nice to see him getting involved in the receiving game with Nyheim Hines also there.
Yeah, I want to say the running backs had 50% of the target share that week for the Colts.
That's going to be huge for him because if they can't get things going on the ground, that's going to be awesome for your squad to have some backup receiving potential. Clyde Frog, not so great of a week 1, not great yards per carry.
The biggest disappointment so far for me. I was really expecting a bigger season from him this year.
I think a lot of people were,
just based off of the improvement on the offensive line and everything. So I'm not concerned yet, but
I wasn't concerned week 1, but I was definitely concerned week 2 because he looked like shit.
Yeah.
I was like trying, especially with the fumble. Obviously that was terrible.
Yeah,
But like,
watching that game, there's no rhythm to their running game. Obviously, their passing
I
game
think
is
that plays into
insane.
it. I agree.
But yeah, it's rough, and like he's not like it's not like his carries are awful. He was running for like 4 yards a carry, which is fine. Like it just makes to me, it needs to be like just serviceable enough to where you have to like account for it. But with Mahomes, like that's it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Um, so this is also a good point in this matchup to talk about George Kittle. He had 78 yards in the first week, only 4 catches though, so not a ton of work there for George. But he did capitalize week 1. When we get to week 2, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So let's go ahead and move on to the last game in our week 1 slate. And that was the Kentucky Elk taking down the Baton Rouge Bombers. The Elk. This is actually this is the one I thought would be probably the tightest game as far as like where that people were preseason. So I feel like the Baton Rouge Bombers and the Elk were pretty close to each other. Obviously, Kyler Murray has been phenomenal to start these first 2 weeks, and then with the touchdowns now being 6 points. For the last couple of seasons, you're just going to get massive production out of a guy like Kyler.
Oh yeah.
And then going against Joe Burrow. Joe played really well week 1 too. And it just didn't really translate to a ton of points. 22 is fine, but we want to see more from Joe as the season goes on.
Justin just runs into like just a weird week 1 for his team. Like you get
130 is very respectable.
It's a good week. You get like Kyle Pitts in the Eagles game, like Atlanta only puts up 7 points, which just seems strange. And you've got Callaway who got started, and they put up 35 points on the Packers, but he
38 points, and he didn't even do shit.
And he didn't do shit.
They had 2 targets,
which is crazy given like his production in the preseason. But I guess
I don't understand.
We know by now, preseason doesn't mean shit. But my biggest takeaway was Hawkinson. I was all up on him this offseason. Like I think I said that many times in our podcast. I thought he was going to be the tight end 3 this year. So just proving my point.
Yeah, Hawkinson has been red hot. I mean, he's a perfect match with Jared Goff. They don't have anything else as far as pass catchers on that team.
Him and brother Cephas. That's it.
It's going to be him, Cephas, and the running backs. That's literally all they have. So I want to quickly talk about this Kyle Pitts week 1 because I have him in redraft, and the Falcons are just completely incompetent. They basically took him off the fucking field during red zone opportunities. They're just like, no, we don't need him. We didn't draft him at number 4 because he's amazing in the red zone. No, we're just going to take him off the field. They literally, I couldn't even believe my eyes when I saw that shit. I was like, what are we doing? Like, this is the reason you took this guy and you just don't use him. So, and they figured it out, I think, in week 2. They kind of gave him more targets, but I didn't really see how they used him in the red zone. But I mean, it was just sick to watch that. And he only put up 3 points, but I'm expecting better weeks from Pitts as he gets more looks. But Hawkinson right now is a surefire tight end 1 for Dustin.
Yeah.
Or not for Dustin.
And potentially shame on us like for expecting a lot out of somebody that's in his first year as a tight end, which is, I mean, it's almost impossible to be that great in your first year.
There hasn't been very good ones, if at all. I mean, but I've kind of just put all my eggs in the Pitts basket and I truly believe the hype. So, I mean, it's only week 2. There's still plenty of time for him to really blow up. So, but right now for Justin's team, doesn't even need him. Just let him play in the flex, maybe bench him on bad matchup weeks. It's fine. Corey Davis, awesome week 1.
That's exactly what I was about to bring up.
Great week 1.
He's great. He ran into a little bit of trouble week 2, but that's not surprising given the matchup that he went up against there. So I think week 1 is a better indication of the season he's going to have than the second week. So
yeah, he just ran into the Patriots, and they always lock down the team's number 1 every single time.
Every time. Yep.
What other notable stuff from this game? Godwin looked pretty good. Deontay Johnson got hurt, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
Zeke was bad week 1. He was very bad. salvaged a touchdown in week 2, but Tony Pollard looks like the real deal, man. Like
every
time I watch the game, he's just so much more explosive.
Yeah, they're just a good duo though. Like if I'm Dallas, I'm happy. Obviously, you're paying Zeke a lot of money, but I mean, I'm happy. Zeke's the best pass protector in the NFL, so he's going to be on the field the majority of the time. And if you need a guy to make 4 yards out of 2 yards, can't do much better. So
yeah, I think
we'll be all right.
For fantasy purposes, the days of him being this every down workhorse, they're gone. So, I mean, I kind of thought that he would be able to hold on to that type of role longer, but it does not seem to be the case. And that's all right. He's still going to get his production. It just might not be as much as people thought.
Mm-hmm.
So moving over to Dustin's team, got kind of a middling performance for Kamara. It feels weird saying that with 15 points, but like he could have, I feel like there could have been more from Kamara in that game with 20 carries.
So which Saints is fact and fiction for you? Week 1 or week 2? Like which one is?
Dude, I don't even know. Like, I mean, week 1 was just so wild. I just feel like something in that week had to do with the Packers just not being on the same page because of the Rodgers situation. But like at the same time, like they've been nothing changed for that team since last year. Like what?
Yeah,
like what is different?
Week 1 to week 2 at the Saints, and they're down. I guess like what, half their coaching staff.
That's true too.
I don't know if they're just not prepared for that game, or what.
They didn't even show up.
Jameis has like one of the biggest variances in the NFL as far as what he can do on the field any given week. But
I love people the first week that thought like they're like, oh my god, Jameis is fixed. The Bucs are idiots for letting him go. And then the second week it's like, holy shit, he's back. He's back.
Boy. You're gonna see him on an advert for
that LASIK. He's gonna be on what's that LASIK place on US 19 in Palm Harbor? He'll be the advertising guy for there. That'll be it's like the big billboard there on Tarpon Springs. All right, moving along. We got David Montgomery, huge freaking week 1. He looked awesome week 1 in that primetime game, and he posted like a 41-yard right out the gate. Looked so good. And what other big one? Obviously, Cooper had a huge week 1. He had 26.9 points against the Bucs, 13 of 16 as far as targets and catches. That's amazing. Kind of dudded week 2, but great week 1. But that's kind of what you expect from Cooper, to be honest, at this point. He kind of has some variance as well. Kareem Hunt did his normal 14.
Devontae Smith, being the co-resident Eagles fan, Dan's a Eagles fan as well. I was not expecting him to be leading the team in targets after 2 weeks, so that is something to keep an eye on.
He's their one. I mean, he's for sure their one. Yeah. And he's kind of been what I thought he was going to be so far. I mean, I think they just need to keep getting that offense to click, but I noticed like with him on one side, Jalen Reagor on the other side, Reagor had a couple of opportunities for touchdowns that were either he's like stepped out of bounds on one of them got called back. Like the receivers are kind of looking up in Philly over the last couple of weeks.
Please don't.
I just said it. I don't really care because I'm not an Eagles fan, so I'll say it. But I need it for Reagor, obviously. But like
for me, saying that about Devontae Smith, like my internal like monologue is like admitting something that I don't really want to do because I don't want to say it out loud, and it, to me in my mind sounds like blasphemy. But like outside of being an Eagles fan, it's probably like, yeah, he looks good because he won a Heisman and he's great at football.
He's a monstrous football player.
But I'm like, he's an Eagles receiver. He's not going to work out.
Well, it's that, and then the fact that pre-draft people were kind of having concerns just based on his size too. So everybody was like, "Oh, is he the real deal? Can he actually hold up?" Like so far, it looks pretty good. So let's go to week 2, Sean. We got the
fast forward
out of the way. Fast forward. So let's start at the top with. I think.
Wow, you just want to start with yourself, huh?
Okay, so I jacked up my point total for week 2. So it's 141 to 98. So I just left the same one from week 1 like a doucher. So that week, I didn't even start Brandon Ayuk week 2 because week 1 was such a fucking disaster. Ended up starting James Robinson, who's also been a disaster. Who pulled me out 6.4 points, but flex play, that's not the worst thing in the world. Had obviously a huge week 2 again from Tom Brady. 38 week 1, 39
That's
week 2. That's
insane.
hopefully this just keeps it up all year. I mean,
they have no running game. I mean, is he going to break his own? Who's got the record now? It's Manning, right? For touchdown passes, 56, 55.
I remember, wasn't there a year that like Andrew Luck had like 50, and then yeah, you're probably right. I'm pretty sure it's a Manning year.
It was Brady, and then Manning broke it. I think like his first or second year in Denver, right?
I mean, I don't know one way or another, but I know they both had a huge amount of touchdowns in their respective years. But I mean, Brady at this point, he doesn't look anything like anything that has anything to do with the word slowing down, the phrase slowing down. It's not happening right now. So
when you have those receivers around you, like this is better than his 07 with Randy Moss and Welker, and I don't remember if he had the tight ends yet or not on that team. I don't think he did yet.
No, I think it was a couple years before.
I think they came out in 08.
I think that 07 year he had like obviously Wes Welker. I think Edelman just got on the team at that point. But yeah, that team was wild.
I don't see how this has to be a better roster around him for sure. Outside of the running backs, but fuck it, it's 2021. You don't need a running game to be great. So.
Well, no, they got Gio. Like Gio's a fine third down back. Like that's kind of the guy that's
what he didn't have last year. Yeah.
So yeah, he's been phenomenal for me the first 2 weeks. Honestly, it's kind of kept me afloat because I won both games pretty handily, but just the point numbers, 141 and 153 have mostly been because of Tom Brady being Tom Brady at this point. So I'm very happy with that. Barkley has started off pretty slow, as kind of expected. Honestly, I didn't expect anything for at least the first few weeks. But I'm expecting something this week. If we don't see shit from Saquon in week 3, I'm going to be a little bit sour.
The pitch in your voice when I convinced you to bench him in another league, and he ran for that 41-yard rush in the first quarter.
I was a little upset. I'm not going to lie, because but then he didn't do shit. I remember we were watching the game. His next 11 carries went for like -3 yards or something.
It's impressive.
So it's just. He's not. I mean, I was just watching the game. He's not 100%. Obviously, the line for the Giants is fucking miserable. So, like, when you have a guy that's hesitant running behind a shitty line, you're just never. It's not going to work unless he gets wide open space, which is exactly how he, did so well with Eli Manning, because Eli would love to dump it off, but Danny Dimes just fucking takes off with his legs.
Because he's the best running back on the team, Eric.
He's the best running back on the team, bar none. Not even it's not even a question. So it's I want to see more from him in the passing game, because at this point he's not looking like it as a runner. So if he doesn't get that going, I'll be a little upset. Moving along, some other players on my team here. Devontae Adams picked it up week 2 after just the entire Green Bay offense took a shit week 1. Chubb, 15 points after 14 the first week, just exactly what I expect from him at this point.
Never disappoint you.
Nope. Another touchdown from Hopkins, another touchdown from Thielen. Kelsey with his annual weekly whatever, 19 points. He's just 17 points, just awesome. Jason Sanders with the goose egg, 2 goose eggs. I've had 2 goose eggs. I got a Brandon Ayuk goose first week, and then I got a Jason Sanders goose second week. So I'm expecting a bounce back for Sanders.
The only goose that matters is the one in the loss column, Eric. Don't you worry about it.
Now, can we quickly talk about just on Tibbs' team? Donovan Peoples-Jones, also DeLone Cartered. We've had 2 DeLone Carter references this podcast. We had Donovan Peoples-Jones and Ronald Jones too. So if you have a Jones in your team, watch the fuck out for a DeLone Carter, because that's a problem. Darius Slayton actually put up 11 points for Tibbs, and KJ Osborne has looked like a decent little pickup as well. So these are guys that, you're just throwing them out there and they seem to be hitting. So
the Bears defense dropping 21 for Tibbs. Love to see it.
Look at Tibbs, but the thing is that's interesting about Tibbs' team is like he's found a couple of guys in these first 2 weeks that really keeps these point totals afloat, along with Mahomes. I just think it's funny that like he puts up 88 week 1 and then 98 week 2. Like that could win weeks. That could win weeks.
That's gonna win. He will win a game. He's gonna win.
He's gonna win a game for sure. And I think it's gonna be next time he plays Alex.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I think it's. I like that the team competes. They don't they don't go down easy. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next game.
Do you worried about Bobby Trees at all, Eric?
I mean, I'm kind of worried about Bobby Trees, but I'm not like, I'm not on DEFCON 5 or anything like that. I'm kind of just like, okay, well, Cooper Kupp clearly is the wide receiver 1 on this team, but I feel like as the weeks go on, teams will start to kind of key on that. Yeah. And then maybe we'll get kind of a resurgence. But for right now, he's putting up 6-7 points. When he gets those touchdowns, I'm okay with it.
Just so you know, the DEFCON goes backwards. So 5 is like
DEFCON's the shit. We're good to go.
DEFCON 1 is shit is hitting the fan.
Okay, so yeah, we're definitely not at DEFCON 1. I didn't pick up that part of the history textbook clearly. So
you're welcome.
Sir. Thank you for that. Week 2, we had a Muskrats Lambs matchup. This is clearly one that James, wanted to win. Everybody wants to win against the Muskrats, but wait a second, holy shit! So the Muskrats scored 99, which would have eked out Tibbs. Just barely eked out Tibbs if they played each other. And that wasn't including a 26-point performance from Teddy Bridgewater in the starting lineup. Wouldn't have done that, but that's a classic Alex move. Who else does he have? Like Jimmy Garoppolo? Oh, yeah, Danny Dimes go for 31.
And Lawrence against Denver. I wouldn't have started Lawrence against Denver. How is Lawrence getting away with playing so badly? Is it because
Urban?
Because of that and what's his name in New York? Throwing 4 picks?
Oh, Zach Wilson. I mean, that helps the cause, but I think everybody universally knows that Urban Meyer just sucks ass.
That's true.
And I think they're just willing to give him a pass at this point because
I agree. I'm just surprised that there's not like more like even like just seems like everybody's still like swooning over him, so getting a free pass.
I mean, he looked decent week 1. Like there was moments week 1 that I watched some of his game and I was like, all right, he's kind of making some nice plays, and then week 2 obviously ran into a better defense and just got toasted. So, all right. So let's see who else we got. So Najee Harris played well week 2. Brian Edwards kind of sluggish first 2 weeks. Not really anything super crazy.
Commit.
He had a good old fashioned goose egg, but he had a catch. He had a catch for the goose egg. So that's impressive. Jalen Waddle dudded week 2, but that entire offense was ass. Henry Ruggs. Let's talk about Henry Ruggs. That was a nice little week 2 for him.
This is the Henry Ruggs podcast, correct?
This is. And I'll tell you what, I apologize to absolutely fucking nobody that Henry Ruggs still stinks. He stinks. I'll say it again and again and again. I don't think he's good. I think he's just one of those guys that gets wide open on fucking busted coverages, and it's going to be fucking John Ross in the next 2 years. I still believe. I'm keeping the faith, and I'm not backing down. Henry Ruggs stinks. So I just needed to say that, get that off my chest.
Seconded.
I just don't believe yet. If he pulls this off 2 more weeks, then we'll start talking. But I don't feel like it's going to be anything consistent. We'll see. Let's see. He started Janu Smith and Cole Kmet. Did that really happen?
He started. Yes, he did.
That is questionable. Over Tony Pollard. 21 points on the bench. That hurts.
I will say it was the most impressed I've been in Hardman. Just watching in a game, not fantasy wise, but like.
Yeah, I mean Hardman, he's looked decent. I mean, the first week he was kind of ass, but he looked pretty good. Yeah. Week 2 there, he had some nice catches, and he felt good for the flow of the offense as a regular old football term.
As the Tyreek Hill manager, everybody else was open that game. So, fuck you, Baltimore.
What do you think about Herbert's first 2 games?
I think
he's been pretty mediocre.
I'm not concerned whatsoever.
You're still on board even against pretty shitty Dallas secondary, only dropping 19 points.
I mean,
it's 31 of 41 completion percentage, 338, and a touchdown and 2 picks.
I can't believe you say this out loud, but I think throughout the year, it's gonna. I don't think Dallas's defense is going to be like bottom of the barrel this year.
Okay.
I think they're going to be a middling. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they're going to be like somewhere in the weird middle, like 15 teams as far as defense goes. Just based off of the fact that they changed their defensive coordinator over the offseason, because last year was just a shit show.
They had to. And Dan Quinn, say what you want about him.
He's a great
head coach. I think he's one of those like Wade Phillipsy kind of guys that's just better in that role and just let him do his thing.
Yep. A couple of his guys that he had over in Atlanta, I think, too.
Yeah, he got Keanu Neal, which obviously is a help in the secondary. And then Micah Parsons has been really, really solid at linebacker. I've watched both of their games, obviously.
Yeah, I think he led the NFL in pressures last week, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's not even a defensive end. Like he was playing because DeMarcus Lawrence blew out his foot. Yeah. So like I'm impressed. I mean, they look better. Than last year. I mean, it's hard to get worse than last year, but they look a little better. Let's talk about a couple other James players. Tyler Lockett is the wide receiver 1 after 2 weeks.
I think he was the wide receiver 1 through like 4 or 5 weeks last year too. I think
that I've never owned him in anything, so I'm gonna have to take your word on that.
It might have been week 8. Like the first half of the year was amazing, and then it was just I think he got hurt in game one game, and then it was just a precipitous just fall.
That makes sense. He dropped 23 and then 24, so pretty great start. James had Brandon Cooks too, who's had a pretty great start to the year himself.
I would not recommend starting him this week.
Yeah, probably not. But he had 14 and 13 the first 2 weeks, so that's pretty impressive.
So it's like ideal wide receiver 3 flex, to be honest. Like he's just always consistent. He's a wide receiver like 2 every year. It's crazy.
I mean, that's all. And nobody really wants him. Like he's just like a forgotten player. Like nobody gives a shit about him, especially because now that he's on Houston. But
that's why he's in Houston.
Yeah, it's a perfect spot for him. It's just everybody can just forget about him. And then McCaffrey doing McCaffrey things. I don't even think we need to talk about him.
No, I would definitely start him this week.
Yeah, don't bench him, James. That's probably not a good idea.
Although, do you always notice that like the guy that just gets super hyped in the week, it just never seems to pan out, even if it looks so obvious. Like if I were to tell you McCaffrey, like what should he realistically be projected against Houston this week? Like 23 points?
I put him at least 21. At least.
Like every time something like this, it just seems like a slam dunk. Like honestly, I should just start taking the under on those things because something weird happens or some game script falls apart where we think it's going to happen one way, and the NFL just says, "Nope, fuck you."
Well, it seems like that happens every single time. You're right. Like I don't know why, but it just does.
I don't know what it is. Like Herbert against Dallas.
Herbert, that game was supposed to be a fucking barn burner.
That game's it's gonna be 80 points, no problem. And then it turns into, oh yeah, by the way, the Chargers defense is probably better than its offense right now. And Dallas is not a fucking dumpster fire. And now we got a 20-17 game. So
yep. It's crazy.
I don't know. It's just like it's obvious, but is it too obvious?
Some of these too obvious ones can come back to bite you, that's for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to your game. So we got the Long Gamers against the Baton Rouge Bombers.
Not a good week.
And the Bombers get their first win. Look really nice. They had a fun. If you just look at his lineup, just the consistency down the roster, almost all the players had 10 points except for Corey Davis, who had 0.8. Everybody had 10 or more. So that's beautiful to look at.
And I would say I'm not concerned about Davis, like I said before. I think that's just a Patriots
bad matchup. Yeah,
we'll bench him twice this year, and it would be his 2 games against the Patriots.
Yeah, Marquise Brown has been excellent for the first 2 weeks. He's the number 5 receiver through 2 weeks. Dudu Smith-Duster, he had a slow week 1, but picked up 10 points in week 2. Hawkinson was awesome again last night, or a couple nights ago now on Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
Chase, 2 straight weeks with a touchdown after a fucking horrific preseason. Once again, shows you that preseason doesn't mean shit.
Did not see this coming.
I did not think anything was going to really happen for Chase in the early part of the year. I thought it was going to be a late bloomer type of thing.
As soon as somebody starts talking about not being able to see a football because of the lines on it.
Lines, holy shit! As if he didn't have a year to to work out with an NFL ball. Like what do you? I don't even want to. That's just horrific. He's an idiot.
My pants after taking him at one.
Nobody said he was smart.
It's true.
So Joe Burrow, 2 straight weeks with kind of average performances, but the rest of the team really picked up the slack. Zeke and Carson both had 15. Just a pretty good week for Justin, straight down the board. 19 points from the Patriots defense against the Jets is obviously pretty sweet.
Yep.
Sean, you had Clyde Frog really dumped the bed.
Well, just the running backs, just not great.
Great.
Tyreek got pretty much game scripted out of the game,
he got doubled the whole game.
Schemed, yes. It's going to happen this year. Usually he still finds a big play. Baltimore just didn't let it happen this week, so it's tough. But
yeah,
when you're that good.
AJ Brown kind of has been a little bit sluggish to start the year. He had 10 the first week, 4 the second week.
Yeah,
Better days are probably ahead.
I was not really keyed into this week's matchups during the Sunday afternoon. So when I saw Tennessee come back and put up that many points, I was like, oh, sweet AJ Brown. And then I looked at
nothing,
and I was like, what the fuck?
Nothing.
Who did this? And it was Derrick Henry.
It was just the Derrick Henry show. DJ Moore played well. Cortland had a fucking awesome week too without Jerry Jeudy. 12 targets, 9 receptions, 159 yards. I expect more of those type of numbers now that Judy's out.
Yep.
Jacksonville is pretty shit though, but as the matchups keep coming in, Sutton's going to be pretty nice. Devin Singletary's looked really, really good for the first couple weeks.
He's really good between the 20s. He's very good between the 20s. He has been since he's been in the league. It's just a matter of touchdowns. He broke off a big touchdown to start that game. So I get that. I'm going to end up with double digits. If I don't get that, he's going to be somewhere between 8 and 10 points every week. I pretty much
and that's fine as your flex. You'll take that.
Yeah.
Goddard had a kind of a slow week too.
Yeah,
he did catch a touchdown week 1, I believe.
It's going to be a get right week this week. They're playing Dallas. He plays well against Dallas. So.
All right. So yeah. So you take an L even with a 37-point performance from Lamar Jackson.
He really tried.
He tried to keep you in the game. It just wasn't quite enough. But 1-1 is a respectable start for both of these squads. So right in the thick of it, obviously. Let's go ahead and move on to the biggest week of the season so far, and to doing some quick research before the podcast. This is the 3rd highest point total since we've moved to Sleeper. It is 194 from Scavelli and the Toronto Battle Axes. So obviously this was spearheaded by Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones going for 80 plus points. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's just they're both just outrageous last week. Both those players combined are pretty close to Tibbs. I wonder if 3 players on Scavelli's team could beat just one.
I mean,
Tibbs
them and Wilson. Let's see, quick math time.
You're gonna do that. I'm not doing that.
That's 106 between his top 3 players. So that would have beat
Alex and
Tibbs and Alex.
And Alex. Yep.
Love to see it.
Jesus. I mean, that's what we're expecting this year from those 2 guys. We're expecting big numbers from those 2, and that's one of the big reasons that this offseason we've touted Scavelli as a top 3 team. If they play like that, he's going to win the league. So that's a huge help especially when George Kittle is dropping 17 yards week 2. Yeah. With Ayuk really not being involved. It was basically the Debo show for both week 1 and 2 for the San Francisco 49ers. Are you worried about Kittle? I kind of am. He's kind of been a little bit hit or miss.
Have they needed him yet? That's the only part.
Technically, no.
They haven't been down in the game really. And Debo just popped off week 1. Week 2 is just. I guess the Eagles have a really good defense.
Maybe the Eagles can finally cover a linebacker. I don't know.
News to me, and obviously San Francisco can play defense. So I think it just turned into a defensive struggle of a game. So I don't know. We'll see.
Let's see. Let's talk about some other players. Mike Williams has looked really good for Scavelli for the first 2 weeks. He's
trade him before you get
my expectations. Yeah, he's going to get hurt. The Raheem Mostert factor. Stephon Diggs looked good week 2. Let's see. Darrell Henderson has looked really nice the first couple of weeks as well. I was kind of not one of his biggest fans, but so far it looks like I'm going to be wrong on that. And Sony Michel does not seem to be a factor whatsoever. The Rams are idiotic for trading a 4th-round pick for a guy that literally is not being used. I don't understand what they're doing. They just don't care about draft picks at all. They're the opposite of my philosophy, so I hate it. Bucks dropping 19 points with those 2 pick sixes at the end of the game. You'll love to see that.
That's nice.
Let's talk about the Elk. The Elk had a big week 1 and then kind of dudded in week 2, mostly because of just a few players, actually. It was Kamara, Cooper, and Chenault.
Eric, I see one. It's there.
We have another one? Another DeLone Carter? Holy shit. His last name isn't Jones, though. What if it was Aaron Jones? That'd be crazy. Watch out, Scavelli. It's coming. The DeLone Carter's coming. Negative 0.3 for Chenault. That was rough. I think he got hurt, though. That's why.
Yeah.
And then Cooper kind of dudded with 24 yards, and Kamara really dudded with 3 points. Basically got scripted out because they were down so early. Just kind of one of those off weeks. And then still, Kyler Murray, 43 points. Didn't really matter, though. Devontae Smith did nothing last week. Holy shit, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's a whole offense thing last week. The only person I want to say Hurts had like 180 yards passing, and he had a 91-yard pass to Quez Watkins in that game.
I'm glad I didn't watch that game. That's all I'm saying. That seems like a rough game to watch.
Yeah, they're somewhere between those 2 games. I don't think they're as good as they were week 1. I don't think they're as bad as they were week 2. So
yeah, week 1 was against Atlanta too. Remember, Atlanta's going to be fucking bad this year. They're going to be very bad. All right, so let's go to the last game of this week 2 slate, and that is the Swallows against the Lampposts. And the Lampposts lose 2 straight to start the year. I wonder how many people saw that coming. Certainly not me.
Nope.
But a good week for the Swallows to take them down. 148 is very respectable. And Terry McLaurin looked amazing, even with Taylor Heineke on Thursday night when we were watching it, Sean. He couldn't be stopped.
Great. It was fucking great. Full of Terry.
Him, Cuppins, Deebo Samuel there. Just phenomenal. It's looking great as far if you're going with the recency bias for those 3 players. As long as they don't slow down, this gonna be a tough team to go up against.
I fully expect there to be like a shift change with Javonte Williams at some point this year too, with Denver.
Eventually, yeah.
And that's just going to be even throw more on top of like whatever he's getting now. So that's scary. He does get a little.
He kind of needs it though. With Miles Sanders being Miles Sanders and losing Cam Akers earlier in the year and having some injury issues, like Javonte Williams getting the load would be really huge for the Swallows. I also think too that not a lot of people have talked about him, but Chase Claypool has looked incredible the first 2 weeks. It just hasn't worked out for him for some reason. Like either something's getting called
there's
back.
a reason. The reason is been
but he's made some crazy good plays first couple of weeks. I would love to see that potential end up being reached because it would be wild.
If Deontay Johnson misses any time, it's gonna. We're gonna find
Claypool fest.
We'll find out real quick. Yeah,
I would love that though because I'm just a Claypool fan in general. So he has even more room for upside there. Antonio Brown, I'm seeing, is now on the COVID list.
He is.
I did not catch that.
Yeah, he's not still living with Tom Brady, is he?
I don't think so. I think he finally got his own place.
You imagine if Antonio Brown gave Tom Brady COVID?
I don't know. That would make me pretty sad. I think Tom Brady said he had COVID earlier in the year too already.
He had it in February after the boat parade.
I don't blame him. That makes sense.
Yeah.
He also lost Jarvis Landry to an injury
because
he was looking pretty good without Odell because Odell still hasn't really done shit either.
What is going on with him? Is he playing? Why is he not playing?
Odell?
Yeah.
I think his leg is still jacked up.
Is it really? Oh.
I think he's not like either he's not 100% or it's some separate injury. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But losing Brown and Landry kind of hurts a little bit as far as short term with some of these flex plays. But he's got guys like Myles Gaskin, James Conner. There's some guys that can find their way in there.
I very much see like the Bucks. If it's going to be like a trade off every week, it seems like with either Antonio Brown or Mike Evans. I think Godwin's going to be like the guy that has like 80 yards every week. Or that's the way it's going to feel.
Then whoever they key on the other two.
Yeah. I mean, also Gronk has been lights out to start the year. So
like you can't double everyone. Like what are you going to do? It's somebody's going to go off every week. Just depends on who. So yeah.
They'll trade off having weeks with like 15 to 20 points, and then he'll get games like this. But I mean, if it is a flex spot, that's fine.
Right. Let's talk about Dan's team. So let's talk about first is Antonio Gibson. He started off week 1 with 8.8, and then week 2 7.3, good enough for RB 34 through 2 weeks. Not the start that he was hoping for. Obviously, no touchdowns, and it seems like in week 2 he lost a lot of the receiving work to J.D. McKissick, which is not a good sign after the offseason. I've been kind of following along that Ron Rivera's like, we're talking about a CMC level workload for Antonio Gibson. That does not seem to be coming to fruition. That's going to hurt Dan's team a little bit probably. And then obviously Dalvin Cook is going to be fine. But, after losing J.K. Dobbins, really Dan was expecting Antonio Gibson to kind of take that next step. And so far it hasn't really happened.
Yeah. I mean, we both watched that game. If I was the Gibson owner, I would have been pulling my hair out watching that game because he was
running well.
He was running well every time he got the ball.
He's running great. They don't give it to him, especially with Heineke at quarterback. My thought was like, why wouldn't they just run him more?
Yeah,
but they said fuck it.
He's gonna have a game here coming in the next couple weeks. He looks fine.
It has nothing to do with Antonio Gibson. That's the thing. Yeah. It's all about usage.
Can we back to Josh Allen because this time last year he was putting up 40 points a game. So regression is still a thing, even if he doesn't like. It's not like he looks terrible playing Pittsburgh's defense week 1 when they have all of their players. They're probably the best defense in football. I can kind of forget that game. This game scripted out, but it's still 2 weeks in. It's just you're not getting the same thing you got last year when Dan was just rolling through the league. So something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, Allen is QB 18 through 2 weeks, so kind of not what people thought they were going to get, especially in redraft leagues. If you drafted him high, you're kind of a little disappointed at this point. Julio Jones, after kind of a weak 1, bounced back for Dan with a 13-point performance, all yardage, no touchdowns, which apparently that just follows him around, is just not scoring touchdowns.
Classic Julio. Yeah, and classic Keenan Allen.
Classic Keenan Allen as well. But I love Keenan Allen. I'm so sad that I'm an idiot for trading Keenan Allen. I should have just kept him. I love him. Let's see what else we got to talk about. Mark Andrews kind of hasn't really done anything in the first 2 weeks, but he's going to get his touchdowns and kind of even out. He'll be a volatile play every week, basically.
Yeah, he's not a yardage monster. It's going to be touchdowns for him.
But this is the first year that Dan has owned Mark Andrews in this league, so I wonder if he's a little bit sour about the performance so far.
Find out. Surprised he didn't start Tyson Williams.
He didn't?
No. Benched him.
For Cole Beasley.
Cole Beasley.
Beasley's a fine flex play most weeks, but
yeah.
All right, so that's gonna wrap up week 2. So let's go ahead and look at the standings after 2 weeks. So you got the Lambs up top, and James gotta love that. He's at 307 through 2 weeks for points. The Armadillos second, so the only undefeated teams are James and myself at this point. The Battle Axe is putting up 314, so he's got the most points in the league at 3rd place. Expect more big performances from Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones. I'm expecting that point total to continue to go up. Then we have a couple of a really close race, kind of like exactly what we predicted. With the muck, if you will. I just expected Dan to be in the muck or higher, and that has not been the case. The Elk, Bombers, Swallows, and Long Gamers all are between 263 and 284 as far as points, so not very far away from each other, and all at 1-1. The Muskrats, a must-win game against Tibbs. They barely get it, and they're at 1-1 with 214 points. So I'm intrigued to see how the rest of this slate plays out for the rest of the year. We'll check in on this as much as we can throughout the season. Like I said earlier in the episode, we'll try to get some of these roundups done as frequently as possible, but scheduling and stuff makes it challenging, but we'll keep trying.
If I can make a bold prediction,
sure.
I think 10 is going to stay exactly where it is.
I think that's safe to say. Yeah. Okay. All right, Sean. Now that we've seen 2 weeks of Lampost's losses and 226 total points, what do you think his record will be at the end of the year?
Oh, man. What are we? How many do we play? 14?
Yeah.
14?
13 before.
13 before.
You think this could be an even 7-7? Based on what we've seen?
It's just starting to feel like one of those years. That's why I made that joke about the Justin Senior Award earlier. Like
the Louisiana Hurricanes experience.
Yeah. You got to change your name.
Have to.
Honestly, like I could see this being 5-9 or 6-8. Not because he doesn't have talent on his team. Just like it's one of those years, man.
Just he caught the ugly, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I look at his team. I mean, if you just look at it on paper, you're like, how the fuck did this team only score 117 points? Like Josh Allen, Dalvin Cook, Antonio Gibson, Justin Jefferson, TK Metcalf, Keenan Allen. I mean, it's a good team. Like it should score points. So maybe this is just a fluky bad stretch here. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So we got a couple more short segments here that we'll get through because we talked about a lot of these players, but we kind of just wanted to point out some of these kind of stock ups or studs and duds, if you will, from the first couple weeks. So for stock up, and I didn't include everybody because we could have talked for 4 hours about ups and downs, but these are kind of the big ones that caught my eye. Obviously, Deebo Samuel has been great. The only thing I'm concerned with Deebo is just if he gets hurt. He hasn't really stayed healthy his first few years in the league, but he's looking like a year 3 breakout. Clearly, the team trusts him more than any other receiver right now.
I don't know if it was just with Ayuk coming in and Deebo missing pretty much all of last year, just the fantasy managers just forgetting like the year he had leading up to their Super Bowl run. Like, he was great.
When he plays, he's awesome. He's the Bob Sanders. He is literally one of the better slot speed guys in the league, and it's just a perfect fit for that Shanahan offense.
He fell to me, and he's my wide receiver 3 in our other dynasty league. When I got him at my wide receiver 3, I was like okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you have to have a good backup plan for him when he gets hurt. But other than that, he's going to play well whenever he's on the field. Tyler Lockett, like we mentioned earlier, he's wide receiver 1 through the first 2 weeks. It seems pretty obvious now that they're finding out how to actually use him on a week-to-week basis. So we'll see, over the next couple of weeks if this continues. This trend isn't just a fluke. Obviously, he'll come back down to earth eventually, but so far so good.
Him and Russell Wilson right up there with Rodgers and Devontae Adams is just like best duos in the league for me. Like they're just name a more iconic duo.
They make sense. It just makes sense.
Just makes sense.
Cooper Kupp was awesome first 2 weeks here for the Swallows. Swallows getting 2 stock ups here right at the top, 2 big ones. Really has helped him these first 2 weeks. Marquise Brown, we didn't really talk a ton about him, but he has looked excellent through the first 2 weeks, and I'm a known Marquise Brown hater. So I want to see a little bit more before I start really calling him a stud at this point. But so far he's looked awesome.
Clearly the number 1 option on that team. Like it's like you think like if they brought in Sammy Watkins, like maybe that would do something.
And Watkins has had a lot of targets too.
He has had targets, but Hollywood's been the guy.
He's looked excellent, and for right now, he was kind of a guy that Justin wasn't really expecting a whole lot from. He was kind of more of a flex and a bench guy, but now it looks like he could start him every week, so that's pretty great. Speaking of another guy that looks like he could start every week, Jamar Chase. He was kind of supposed to be another one of those guys that maybe not a ton of first year production, but it's looked awesome. So he's got two great options there in the flex or for his starters at receiver. Brandon Cooks, we talked about, he's just been the forgotten man for his entire career. Basically, nobody seems to care or want him. But whenever he plays, he's putting up yardage, he's getting touchdowns. James is very happy to reap the benefits, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah, Hawkinson has been, like we talked about, he's for a lot of people, he's going to end up, moving into that top 3 discussion. I mean, Kittle is still a great, regular real life player, but fantasy wise, he might have more volatility than a guy like Hawkinson, who is literally their best target in the passing game. So I could see a world where he finishes in the top 2.
With the way they run their offense, I mean, they love their running game. He stays on the field, he blocks. So he
blocks great too. People don't even realize how good he blocks. Yeah. He's not a Kobe Fleener.
Yeah, his snap percentage is probably 90 plus every week.
Yeah, I would love to see his snap percentage. I'm pretty sure it's got to be at least 95. Like, he's never coming off the field. Darrell Henderson for the Battle Axes. Talked mad shit about him earlier in the year with podcasts. Didn't really think he was anything good, but he has looked very good and has held off Sony Michel, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast.
Was he a second round pick
before? In real life or in Dynasty?
Yeah, in the NFL.
I think he was a third.
Was he third?
I think he was a third. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was a third.
Well, he's still good draft stock behind him. So
yeah, the capital's there. I mean, like, they're not gonna just like not use him. And I really don't think he's like, I don't think he's a great back, but like I always thought of him more as like kind of a change of pace guy. I never really thought he was going to be like a stud every down back, but so far it looks like I'm wrong. So
he's a change of pace because everybody assumes that Stafford's going to throw every time. So
that's true. That's true. Yeah, he is the change of pace in a Stafford-led offense. Alex and the Muskrats getting a stock up here on DeAndre Swift. I was really concerned with him because he was injured heading into the year. That being said, through 2 weeks, he is getting a ton of touches, even though he's splitting with Jamal Williams, and he's looked awesome in the passing game for a team that literally has no other options outside of Hawkinson, basically. Yep. So he's going to have a nice floor every week just based on receiving as long as he stays healthy. But so far, it looks great.
I would throw Jamal Williams in this list too. I think he's startable pretty much all year in like a flex spot. So
yeah, I think like he's going to be very Pierre Thomas-y. If you need like six points, you might be able to throw him in your flex and just scrape by on bye weeks and things like that. He's definitely a guy that's usable. I have him in the redraft league, and I've considered starting him already a couple of times just based on the fact that he's going to get points. And then lastly on this list, we have Devin Singletary, who we did mention earlier. He's looking like the lead back. Obviously, Zach Moss was inactive week 1. He didn't really do shit week 2. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of competition right now, which bodes well.
Yeah, we already covered him. I think we pretty much talked about everything that we needed to about him.
All right, let's go to stock down then. So
the floor is yours.
I'm just so like exhausted from thinking about how stupid this whole situation is. Like, if you have Brandon Ayuk, right? He's here. He is. He's very handsome. He does a great job at catching the football. He hurdles over people. He's athletic. He's a first-round draft capital. Here, take it. It's like the wallet thing from SpongeBob. Here, take it. Oh, but we have Trent Sherfield. I don't need that shit. So, like, I just don't understand what the fuck Shanahan's doing. But then it reminded me. There was a time and place years ago when Mike Shanahan was running the Broncos offense, and they went through running backs like fucking underwear. It was like Selvin Young and Michael Pittman and Ryan Terrain and Peyton Hillis. And like, you just never know who was going to be the guy and it's the same. This goes for the Trey Sermon talk. We'll group this all together. He just seems to just have these like vendettas against certain players for certain periods of time. All I'm worried about right now is I don't want to see the fucking Dante Pettis treatment, because I feel like that's where we're trending with Brandon Ayuk. He just had some great production his rookie year, and then fucks up once and he's never seen again. I hope that's not the case.
Is that equatable to the COD 3 treatment?
It is similar. It kind of is if you think about it. You know, it's like, oh, you put the needle in him, you bring him back into the lineup,
and you shotgun him,
and you shoot him again by just taking him out of the game.
If you revive him by Wednesday, you say, "Here he's alive.
Here he is. Everybody start him."
Shoot him again.
I really feel like, because they were kind of doing that in the media too. He's like, oh, we think Brandon Ayuk is great and we love him, but Trent Sherfield's better. Excuse the fuck out of me, Trent Sherfield. I mean, Trent Sherfield has looked very nice. I will say that. Sorry about that, Tibbs. I'm sorry, but he's not even remotely as talented as Brandon Ayuk. We saw it last year. It's one thing if you don't see the talent, right? Like, we saw it last year. He was fucking outrageously good during the absences of Debo. Like, he looked great. So I'm just floored with this situation, and I don't really know what to do. So I'm just benching him until further notice, basically, at this point. I just can't even trust him. Speaking of 49ers, Raheem Mostert gets a stock down just because
he gone.
He gone, and I mean, like, is he under contract for next year with the 49ers at this point?
I don't know.
Because he's 29, I think.
Yeah, he's not young.
So, like, this may be the last time you see Raheem Mostert, especially with, like, if Mitchell ends up panning out and then Sermon pans out, which who the fuck knows. But, I mean, maybe this is the end for Mostert. I don't know, because that's a bad injury too. So he gets a stock down. James Robinson has he's been the fucking Gwazi at this point. He is a roller coaster. He is like, literally, he goes fucking straight down the shitter once ETN gets here. Then ETN gets hurt, straight up the fucking roller coaster again. And then he gets basically dumped week 1 by Urban Meyer, who uses his fucking carries to his like 3 carries. Like, I don't know what the fuck to do with James Robinson. I mean, at this point, now he's back up the roller coaster again last week because he got, I think, the majority of the carries, and then Hyde touched the ball twice. So I don't know what to do with James Robinson. But I love the kid. I think he's a great kid. I would let him sleep in my bed. He's a wonderful guy. But at this point, he's a flex player at best until I see Urban Meyer have any sort of competency.
So flex, got it.
So flex, which is sad because I was expecting more. I was just like, after last year, he was an RB1. I would like, how do you just not use him? I just don't understand them. Anywho, moving along to George Kittle. I don't know if it's really a stock down, other than just maybe like a disappointing start to the year.
I'm not concerned. Like I said, I'm waiting for them to actually be in like a competitive game that's not low scoring, or like them game scripted to actually have to pass the ball where they're not up by like 3 touchdowns on the Lions and they stop throwing the ball. I don't know. Once they get into like their divisional games where it's a very like high level of competition, I think it's going to change. So,
right. Yeah, I do agree with that. And I just think right now the focus is so heavily on Hawkinson in fantasy circles that people are kind of just like panicking on Kittle just because he's not doing what Hawkinson's doing, essentially.
Yeah.
And of course Darren Waller and Travis Kelce, because that's where he was drafted for most redraft leagues, is within that conversation. So people were expecting more, probably.
Honestly, leagues outside of ours, I'd be trying to like fleece people for George Kittle, because I bet.
Yeah, I would be buying low for sure.
I don't think you're gonna be able to do it in our league. You could try.
No, our leagues that won't work. But like if you're playing it with a bunch of Jagaloons, then yes,
yeah,
he is a very easy buy low right now. Clyde Frog, we talked about earlier, just has not looked great so far.
We'll see.
I mean, he's a guy that, literally last year, I think people were drafting him as an RB2 in redraft. People did basically the same thing again this year, and it looks like kind of the same thing. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, give him some time, but right now it's not looking great. Then Laviska Shenault, I think, is a little bit of a bust so far. I mean, he just hasn't really done anything. And
we'll continue to blame Urban Meyer.
I feel like, yes, this is a very Urban Meyer situation.
Urban Meyer. Next question, please.
We'll just move right along to Marquez Callaway, who is truly the dud of this list.
Yeah, this is definitely stock down.
I mean, I just don't understand. He looks so good in the preseason, but I just think that maybe this offense hasn't been able to like fire on the cylinders they thought. It's because at week 1 they were firing on all cylinders, but I just wonder if they just didn't game plan him. Like this happened to with a similar stature receiver, Marcus Colston, back in the day, where there would just be weeks that Colston just didn't do anything, and it was like a Devery Henderson week or a Lance Moore week. It's just, I know, I love Lance Moore. He was a great guy. But there was weeks where it was just kind of like not his week. So maybe, week 1 wasn't his week, and then week 2 is just a joke. So that maybe this happens this week. But I really thought he was going to blow up. So I was just really hyped on him.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened so far. So, I mean, this was, you're playing with house money, though. He got him out of free agency.
Yeah.
It's not like not like you invested big draft capital in this guy or anything. You're just hoping for anything.
Yeah. Speaking of getting him out of free agency, I'm actually surprised you have Troutman in stock down.
He hasn't done anything.
Yeah, but like, what was his stock before the season?
I thought, okay, so like when you go,
like Adam Troutman's like Dogecoin compared to everybody else on this list that's like Bitcoin. Like when we're talking about.
Okay, all right. I'm saying, okay, so here's the deal. Justin and I had various conversations about Adam Troutman. We truly both believe that he was a breakout candidate, if you will, at the tight end position. We thought that, maybe, with Jared Cook leaving and Jameis Winston coming in, who loves tight ends, like this could be a flourishing potential player. So, and he was very talented coming out of Dayton. I really liked Adam Troutman. But through 2 weeks, he's literally been a blocker. He has not been involved whatsoever in the passing game. So I only call this a stock down. His stock wasn't high to begin with, but it's now like basically at its floor. Like it can't get worse than this right now. This is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So if there was any hope of trading Troutman, which I think was Justin's plan because of the other two, or maybe Hawkinson or Pitts, if he had it, I'm pretty sure he's trying to move a tight end. Right now, Troutman is not the guy to move because there's no value there. So I'm intrigued to see how the rest of the year goes for him, because right now it's very, very rough. And then we talked about Antonio Gibson during the Dan pod.
Game plan for Washington, really, that's it. He looks fine. Nothing on him.
Yeah, he looks good. Like we both were watching the Washington Giants game on Thursday, and every time he touched the ball, he looked explosive. He was gashing. What was that? Sorry.
It's because we hate ourselves.
Yeah, I don't know why we did that to ourselves. I had a lot of, obviously, whenever the Giants play, I have a lot of fantasy implications because of all my jackasses that I somehow seem to have after all these years. I've been trying to trade them and nobody wants them. Like, it's tough. And that was with Evan Ingram hurt. I still had all these fucking guys, so I don't know. So anywho, yeah, that's going to do it for the week 1 and week 2 roundup. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We haven't really done anything like this, so we tried our best to give you kind of a breakdown of the games, and then give you some guys that we're intrigued to talk about, whether it be good or bad. So hopefully we get a few more of these going in the next month or two. So Sean, you got anything else to say, or are we good to go?
No, I'm good. You give me like a month from now, I can simulcast from Africa. So.
Oh, simulcast! Hey, that'd be fun. That would be a hilarious time.
That would be great.
You get attacked by some like elephant or something.
Be up at like 2 a.m. Getting ready for safari. Make a podcast. Good to go.
Get your canteen out. Get ready to go. It'd be so funny. All right, so that's gonna do it for episode 17. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.